Good morning, everyone. Microphone check, screen check. Looks like everything's going correctly here. Good, good. My cat's going nuts in the background. Don't mind him. Jeez. All right. Before we jump on in, as always, on the left side of the screen there, make sure to read through the Live Trader Morning Prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that's inside there. If you need to read through that with a little bit more time, you can always download or take a look at that right at the beginning of the stream. And you can pause it and read it. I still got to break that muscle memory habit. If you aren't a member of SSFTG or a part of the YouTube family, check out the join button below the stream to gain access before our next private webinar, get access to the Discord chat, not to mention the awesome badge next to your YouTube name so you can show your support and a boatload of other stuff. If you're trying to figure out what it is exactly that we are doing here in the room, look no further than the Day Trading Academy over on SSFTG. Not including the live streams and everything else that we've got going over here on YouTube. That also has 19 plus hours of material loaded for you, and that collection continues to grow. Please keep in mind that the YouTube broadcast does have between a 3 to 30 second delay. Kind of depends on where you're logging in from in the latencies and all of that. But if you want to level up to the VIP status, you can enjoy the exclusive permanent access to our non-delayed live analysis stream via Zoom Direct Meeting, as well as the monthly VIP webinars, private VIP events, one-on-one scheduling access. The list goes on and on and on, and that one is also continuously growing. So whether you're here and you're totally new, or you're a veteran over on the VIP stream, welcome. I'm glad to have you here with me today. So we can take a look at some news for today. We can take a look at some charts, get things rocking and rolling here and see what all is going on. Don't forget to grab your morning DP levels. Those are posted for you this morning. Those will give you all of the major zones of interest that I'm keeping an eye on. And taking a look at the charts so far. Jeez, oh Pete. This thing is... Before we get into that, hang on. Give me 1 second. All right, sorry about that. So first off, we got to take a look at the news, along with everything else that's happened so far on the markets. A little bit of craziness, but looking at the news earlier this morning at 8:30, we had the core CPI for March came out better than expected, 0.3 versus 0.2, not a big deal. As we go into the rest of the U.S. session, well, there's not much. There's nothing. There's medium and small news announcements again. And so, with that in mind, we are kind of in a spot where, you know, news isn't really going to be a big issue. There's just a lot of volatility going on. So, we do have some speakers going into noon Eastern, and then of course it is Tuesday, so we have the API weekly crude oil stocks. So give us an idea of what to expect for next week, but that's about all that's going on so far. So looking at the jeez, the overall movement on this thing is absolutely ballistic. So we had that original move to the upside. Excuse me, hang on 1 second. There we go. So we had this kind of back and forth, attempting to get that swing going back to the upside. And you'll notice what ended up happening for me. We had that initial move back up towards settlement, or what ended up being settlement. There was also a massive amount of congestion. So when it couldn't make it back through there again, I just hit the exits. I was feeling pretty good when I looked back at it this morning and I saw it had dumped from that spot. I was like, oh, okay, you know, that was a good choice. Now I look back and, well, you know, hindsight being 20/20, that's a little bit of a swing and a miss, I guess. But it just didn't look like they were breaking out of it, which was a correct read at the time. I just wasn't expecting that crazy move back to the upside. So obviously, I'm not in the long anymore. I exited earlier thinking that it was failing, and well, in typical Nasdaq fashion, that got out of the way pretty quickly. Over on the S&P, we've got the sideways kind of meh going on right now. It's kind of looking like maybe a spike and flag-ish sort of thing. It's really gross up here. Obviously, this market's heavily extended, and if we look at it in the bigger picture, there's just been no pullback, and that could explain all of this nastiness. But the nearer term, I think, is fairly obvious as to what's going on. Massive trap underneath the lows. If we look at this in the bigger picture, this is the first time that we've really hit a major swing low trap in quite a while. So taking out a lot of those stops, but not taking out any of the major ones down here, that's a big clue for at least another leg back up towards the highs in an attempt. Now, if we look at the overall volume since we've kind of gone into this range, maybe it'll give us a little bit of a better idea. Okay, well, the POC is a little lower down, 41.1475. Price is staying above it for now. we'll see if they want to hang out there, but man, the S&P is really nasty right now. At least it's got a little more room to go up, I guess, until the channel highs. Over on gold, we had a very nice continuation pop back to the upside and then rolled all the way back down to a new low before, same thing as the Nasdaq, juking back up and screaming back up towards major reversal levels. This move to the upside is breaking out of with a lot more than just I'm not sure conviction, right? I mean, this is a big breakout. So we've got a huge amount of bullish conviction coming to the upside, and with this higher low big rotation, a lot of buyers are going to be looking to hold these tight pullbacks, and that's so far what we've had, one candle pullback. The assumption is that that's going to at least try to keep going for a bit. We could also be creating a 3-press wedge at some point later in the future, but for now it's just a strong rotation back to the upside. And it is breaking above a previous major swing too. This is a confirmed swing. So that's a good thing as far as trend reversal traders go. Over on crude, we've got continuation back up towards the top of the range. This zone around 60.50 is just an absolute brick wall. This is the earlier area where shorts took it lower. This is the secondary area where shorts took it lower. This would be the third time if they're going to try to attempt to take it lower. This just isn't an optimal place for buyers to be wanting to come in looking for a continuation back up. It doesn't make sense here. It would make a lot more sense for buyers to be waiting down in the 59.20s or see a flush underneath these swing lows or something like that rather than buying way up here. So a little bit too high for my taste. Over on the euro, big continuation back to the upside, very strong momentum. Again, just like gold, big breakout to the highs also after a big trap on the lows. That's great for the longs. That's a really, really good indication for more continuation to try to keep this thing going. Looking good. Bitcoin with a nice strong break back above 61, 62, and almost 63. It's covering a lot of ground pretty quick here. We've got a very, very tight little ascending wedge-ish going on here, which a lot of times we'll see a little bit of a pullback and then continuation again, but we're running out of space up here. The upside objectives are starting to get reached, so if the buyers are going to take it, they're going to have to break above these highs with a bit more aggression. We'll see if they can keep it going or not. Getting pretty lofty. Same thing for Ethereum. One of the big levels was, of course, this rising, I guess you could call it that, resistance. It did break out of it, held as support, so that is now out of the way, very obviously. But we've got the same problem. Channel high is not too far away. We've got the ascending wedge. There's just not much going on, and they're running out of time. So it just doesn't make sense to be a buyer way up here. Not unless we get a really strong breakout, and this thing goes, catatonic to the upside, then sure, but I think longs are already in, and I have a hard time believing that more longs are going to be buying way the heck up here unless there's a catalyst. Pardon the caffeine. It's a necessary essential of life. All right. So, starting off from the top down, all-time highs, yay! All-time highs are excuse me, they're a good and a bad thing. Here's the thing, right? I mean, when we're talking with all-time highs, that's what's going to be on the news, right? That's the stuff that's going to draw attention. Hey, Nasdaq's at all-time highs, right? That's going to be the buzz. That's what everybody's going to be paying attention to. So it's a good thing in that it draws a lot more sentiment. But it also means that it's going to draw a lot more profit taking. A lot of buyers who will buy on the dip, they just forget about it until they start seeing headlines that the Nasdaq's at all-time highs again, and then they start taking profit again. It's, long-term positions, buyers who bought that big dip for their 401ks, right? They're not going to be looking to do a whole lot until they start seeing all-time highs. Then they start realizing, wait, maybe I can cash in on this a little bit. I've been needing a new vehicle, right? So you can kind of feel that pressure when you start hitting these all-time highs, and that causes a bit of weirdness, especially the fact that we're going to be opening up around them. If we open in all-time highs, that makes it even weirder. So there's a lot of things that can happen here, but this is a big overnight push to the upside after that little inside bull bar on the daily. So we're back up to all-time highs so far from the bigger picture in terms of the overall move. Right? I mean, we're looking way up here. I say way up here. But if we look at it from all the way down at the bottom that formed on March 20, right? Way the heck down here. So far, that was almost an L2. We finally broke another high. We've got another L1, right? So, I mean, if you want to see some indications of continued strength, we've only got 2 L1 pullbacks. L1 trends can go on for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 pullbacks. I mean, they can go nuts. Now, one of my favorite parts about an L1 trend is the eventual L2 pullback, which is that bigger dive down. And eventually it will happen, because it always does. The market's always correct. Will it happen this year? I don't know. I mean, remember, this is a daily chart. But, I mean, realistically, as long as this trend continues to hold these L1s and keep just ripping highs, it's just going to keep having buyers all over the place. And now we're back at the top. This is where profit taking starts coming in. Again, it gets a little bit more awkward up here. So huge L1 trend to the upside. If we look at the 60-minute chart, obviously a lot of that action in the overnight happened, in 1 hour. That's all in one big blow-off move from 8 to 9 o'clock. That's it. I mean, outside of that, it was a giant range before that. And it was basically just a continuation on yesterday's range. It's not really proven a whole lot, but with this big breakout to the upside, it's one of two things. It's either massive exhaustion, a lot of buyers, again, new all-time highs, seeing icing on the cake, taking profit, and then we see this thing just get obliterated. Or we see the Nasdaq do what the Nasdaq does, V-bottom in the morning, and then go screaming back up for the rest of the day, Well, for the rest of the day, sorry, let me rephrase that. Closer to like 6 p.m. when nobody's watching. And the 15-minute, if we're looking at the bigger volume nodes and everything that's going on here, let's redraw all of this to gauge a better idea of what's happening. So obviously, if we look at the last move down, this would have been from the top to the lows, demonstrating, once it populates, that they were showing signs of accumulation in through here and likely exited more volume coming in through here. And then it was nothing but profit taking on the way down on the secondary drive. So now that we have that profit taking drive, once they started forming higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, we know shorts are probably still in this trying to get that move to the downside. Again, just trying to build a story as to what's going on here. And now we can see plain as day, obvious accumulation. Where's the volume node? Right here. As long as price is staying above that volume node, that's a very bullish indication. If we draw price even further, let's move it a little bit further and kind of gauge what's happening. Kind of re-upping with the story here. The POC stayed the same. They came back and continued back up. So this was a very nice pullback in an otherwise longer-term bull trend. That's what you would expect, right? But we're seeing validation of it based on the volume. Now, if there were shorts in this, they would have been short somewhere inside of likely this cluster of volume, looking for the next leg down. You can almost see it, right? We've got 1, 2, looking for 3. You can see them shorting inside of there. A lot of their stops would have been above the highs. So it would not be a surprise at all to see a VVP break when we start kind of chopping above that. But if we go to current price and see what's been going on so far, aside from likely a VVP right inside here, This will give us a really good indication of what's going on, because we know that this move was nothing more than buyers accumulating on the pullback. We start moving on up, right? We've got that big blow off, big obvious VVP. We hit a lot of stops inside here. That rallied up. They found a top. A lot of sellers may be trying to push back down, but realistically, volume is reducing. It's more likely profit taking. And as it continues up, now we're seeing signs of accumulation. Where did they build their accumulation? They built it all the way up to 13,600. Then what happened? They got dumpstered, right? So the shorts got just annihilated if they were continuing to try to short, and it still hasn't come back to allow them out. So this is like the short squeeze of the century. It's just absolute annihilation for shorts who are trying to doubt the market. And well, so far we're starting to see POCs climbing up, and it looks like maybe they're trying to build a third top up here, right? They tried to get one here, that didn't work. This one really didn't do much. They really hit it hard here, that didn't work. Now they're trying again up here. So what a lot of sellers would love to see is a big move down and a continuation. You know, that's what a lot of sellers are going to be looking for. From a bull's perspective, man, I would love that deep pullback, because I don't want to buy way the heck up here. I want to buy down here, right? This is the area of interest, not way up here. So value buyers, they've been sitting on the sidelines for ages now, waiting for the stupid thing to pull back. But again, the concern is that when it does start pulling back, is it too late, right? We'll have to wait and see. Thank you, JT. I appreciate it. So with this movement to the upside, all-time highs, we know the concerns. There's some potential profit taking going on up here. I don't like this big giant bull bar into all-time highs. It scares the crap out of me, especially knowing that we're way overloaded to the upside. Man, I have a hard time believing that buyers are going to want to keep buying up here. It just doesn't make sense. Hey, you know, whatever. I would just rather wait for the pullback, I guess. From the more nearer term, 10 minutes to go until the open. For the more nearer term, starting off with the Asian session, the first rotation down did end up going a full about a 1.5 deviation lower, which is very typical. That's common, right? They went just underneath the 1.5, and then found a bottom and started rotating back the other way. We see that over and over and over again. Very common. So now that we have that rotation back the other way, going into the European session, what are they looking for? Well, the first move to the upside, the concern is that they're going to go about 1.5 to the upside, and that's where we're going to see a top put in. We've obviously blown through that. If the market does want to continue higher, now they're reaching out to double deviations on the European session. That normally would mean a lot more than it does here, okay? Because keep in mind, we're talking about a European session that is 0.29%. Not that big of a deal. When we go backward and we look at some of the other European sessions and the result from those when the market was actually trending, there's just a total massive difference. Now you're talking 0.37, almost twice the size. Well, about 1.5 times the size. So it's still pretty calm and quiet, and going 1.5, 2 deviations outside of this, I think is still pretty normal. We can kind of see what's going on. It's a bit concerning. Looks like we've got 1, 2, 3. I don't like how far they're spaced out. I think it would make more sense to see 3 closer together. We could also be gearing up for a nice little megaphone. So if that's the case, this is pretty low in the megaphone for the short term. Just saying. Not that I want to be a buyer way the heck up here, but it's there. If we look at the rotation from the bottom, we do have a very clean, you can see they juked me hard. I exited underneath that bear bar thinking that it was game over, and I felt great all the way down, and then this happened. I wasn't here to watch it happen, so the salt wasn't in the wound until I got back, but anyway. They topped out at the highs of the European session, failed at settlement, rotated back down. Then they held a higher low on an L5 at the bottom of Euro session, rolled all the way back up, and when screaming higher, it ripped all the way to a top L1 deviation higher, pullback. This is where things start getting a little bit more interesting, because now we've got the half deviation breakout, the 1 deviation breakout. This is a good move with an L5 on the lows. So what are buyers going to be looking for? L5s typically in a trend reversal are going to procure something like an L2, L3, something like that. In this case, it procured, well, I mean, Close enough? Maybe. L3, kind of. Okay. Technically speaking, it never hit it, so it's just an L2. But we've got the L2 rotation that kicked back up. Now we've got L1 buyers. Rotates back up again. Barely even pulls back. Barely even pulls back. Now where are we? We're dipping back to L1. What are we seeing? We're seeing pressure coming in at the lows. What a shock, right? Buyers are trying to keep this L1 trend going. If they fail, the next obvious objective is an L2, L3. I say L2, L3 because the swing low is down here. And that's real close to that L3. So far, though, these L1 buyers, they seem like they're holding this thing up really, really nicely and maybe trying to get that megaphone 3 press top going. So those are the ones that we're going to have to go with for now. Hey, how's it going? Welcome, welcome. We've got the open right around the corner here. About 6 minutes or so. Still plenty of time. One level of interest, at least, would be kind of an inside retest on a high or low. A lot of times when they get those traps on the bottom, I would have preferred it to poke out a little bit further, but get that little dive out, back pop in, inside hold, something like that. That would be a bit more interesting. Yeah, what's up? Why did you keep selling your positions to buy new ones near the end? Great question. So the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm still maintaining my net long position, but it's gone further than my original trade plan had allocated. So originally, if we look at what ended up happening, right? It's very obvious I got chewed up on the way down. Made it work eventually, but like we were talking about, those seats were expensive. And the reason I say that is because I want to maintain a net long, but you can see what I was looking for. We've got this move up, nice little lightning bolt continuation. I was buying here to look for it to go back up. But in the bigger picture, we were cycling off of a huge zone of support. So I don't want to get rid of my long, but at the same time, I'm not going to hold from here and not exit anything if it starts diving and failing and showing. So I have to exit my original intention because that failed. I don't have a choice, right? That trade is completely gone. It's broken. I just have to eat the loss on that. But because I still want to maintain a net long, what I'm doing is I'm exiting the original position with the assumption that now I'm trying to get that deeper pullback, right? So you can see the new position trying to be built in for another leg back up. And then that one failed. So I tried to do the same thing again. And that one failed. So I just got gobbled up on the way down. So I want to buy, but I don't want to buy here and hold way down to here. If I were doing that, that would be okay, but it would be a totally different approach. It would be like one here and then wait. And then maybe one here and then wait. There's just a whole lot of waiting, and yesterday, frankly, I was just a bit too impatient. So that impatience cost me on the way down. But in order to maintain my risk, just in case, something happens, it only takes a tweet. I don't want to be holding a 15, 20 contract position, and then all of a sudden the bottom drops out and I'm down 1,000 ticks on a monstrous position. Then you're talking huge detriments to your account. It's just not worth it. So I would rather reduce my risk along the way while still trying to maintain a net long position, as long as the overall reasoning for the long stays put, which it did. It just cost a lot on the way down because I was aggressive. So, yeah, no problem. That's kind of the compensation for playing ball with the Nasdaq. I feel like, You think I'd learned my lesson, but man, just a masochist. What can I say? $9.28 right around the corner. Be very careful. $9.28. Lots of volume so far pre-market. Expect $28 to cause some jitters. Here's the inside retest. Around 73.25. Nice little dip breaking through that zone. We're still digging into the L1. We're at the potential bottom of this little micro cycle going on here. Let's see what the volume looks like so far today. Very obvious accumulation phase. Very obvious breakout phase. Very obvious reaccumulation phase. Pretty straightforward so far this morning, huh? So sellers want to see this rotate down, but they have not shifted the POC. At least not yet. I mean, the open's in 1 minute, so they're probably going to shift the POC anyway. S&P potentially forming a beautiful trap underneath that doji, but timing is just awful. Right into the open. Settlement's not too far away, so they'll probably fill the gap pretty quick. Let's dance. Quick little trap underneath the lows. Watch for scalpers. From a scalper's perspective, a little wash underneath to the lows of the L1 will be a buying opportunity for them to try to kick it back up towards the highs. Couldn't get a fill. See if they can flush just a little bit further. Oh, missed the boat on that one. Very nice bull bar back to the upside, but now they're going to have to reconfirm. We haven't had any higher highs. Short-term higher highs are being made now. Can they keep it going? Scalpers will be looking to rebuy the 75.50s or so, but that's a pretty strong bear bar on that peak. I don't like those. This almost feels like it needs either a better trap, which that could be it right there, or one more pulse to the downside. You know the Nasdaq. This big VVP waiting down here. If you're expecting it to go to 40, there's the POC shift. That's at 79 now. If you're expecting it to flush down to 40, that means that it's probably going to get down to like, what, 770? Right? Add another 100 points to that. That's usually the typical response. Strong bull bar here. We'll get scalpers involved, but it hasn't broken the highs. It's forcing traders to buy very, very high. And we just shifted the POC. That's a toughie. Still have 3 minutes on the opening volume. At the moment, it's at 78.75. Really nice bullish continuation. Buyers will try to get it. We've got the first breakout. So breakout buyers will be in. I'm not a breakout trader. That's not my shtick. But a retest of the L1 as a secondary bounce would be nice. Little dive into the low 70s, something like that. The POC is still shifting, which is the concern, because price is still staying underneath it, and every time it hits it, a lot of volume stacks in. Wow. POC currently resting at 81. Hey, how's it going? Bulls trying to get more continuation. Short-term little flag. That could be enough to at least get it back up to like the 89s, 90s. It's the open, too. It might just pop the top. Look at that big volume node up here. Would you look at that? At 890. Big, just huge pop. Right there. Nice little retest of the L1. I was hoping they would get just a dive in the low 70s for that trap. I mean, they did what they wanted, what I asked them to, I guess, but I want a little better. Now, the 5-minute volume, price is staying underneath it. Oh, POC just shifted too, back to 81. So the 5-minute volume is still in a fist fight. 1 minute left on the first 5, so it's non-confirmed. Okay, here we go. Bigger 3 press low. Oh, man, or a big bull trap, or a bear trap, I mean, with a bull cycle back up. Trying to grab this little pullback here for a continuation pulse back to the upside. It's looking really, really nice for the move back up to the 90s. There we go. Now they got to break through these 85s. This is the trouble spot. Beautiful. Woo! There we go. Right back up to the objective. Bam! Nice. I was only able to grab one, but, I mean, that's a nice pulse to the upside. Now, secondary objectives, if you really want to try to hold on for, like, the max run, you've got that megaphone way up here. If you were a little bit quicker on the draw to grab a few more than I. Very nice. We got the L1 retest. Got the trap, got everything done. Now they're back up to highs again. Man, 14,000 is not far away. That's insane. Some of the prices these indexes are trading is just nutty. Bitcoin having a little bit of trouble at 63,000. More continuation. They're running. Shorts are stuck, getting more squeezed. They popped right above that volume node too. You can see there was a little bit of a rejection in the wicks. It went... Burp. That was it. Wow, wow, wee, wow. Look at this thing go. Jeez. Incredible rally back to the upside. Went a lot farther than I thought it was going to go, that's for sure. So I guess the problem when you only grab one. Get up to the highs of the megaphone. So far it's been profit taking. Volume is dropping. Okay, well it's starting to pick up pretty fast here in the 915s. I don't think buyers want to let this slide too far. Watch for a volume pulse as they get closer and closer to the top of this megaphone. You'll know where their targets are. They usually make it pretty obvious. So we do have an L1 continuation. Perfect. We've got more L1s. Let's keep that trend going. I need this so like I can see it. Thanks. There we go. Ooh, big pulse in volume up here in the 2250s. Did you see that pop in volume right there at the top? A lot of targets just got hit there. A lot of volume stacking in the 920s. Keep in mind, buyers who were able to get in on this move and maybe hold out longer than I was able to, they're sitting on this move thinking, okay, I do not want to give this back. I do not want to give this back. It's all-time highs. I do not want to give this back. So the stops are getting really tight. Scalpers know that, right? So from an HFT perspective, they'll still be buying these micro pullbacks looking for it to continue back up. More volume building into these highs, 920s building into the 29s now. What a ripper of a move. 81 is the first 5 POC on the Nasdaq. And over on the ES. ES. I love that video. Got this bear bar down. 1975. Man, that looks just absolutely vicious, doesn't it? Monster slide off in the overnight. Probably took out everybody on the planet's stops who was sleeping. Right? Hasn't gotten to the office yet. And then rages all the way back up again. That's mean. More continuation, but now seeing the volume displaying a bit more of an accumulation stance. Volume's building on average. Could be a clue that a pullback is getting closer. We do also have a little bit of a potential start of an undertow, although it hasn't coiled or crossed. Yeah, I know, right? Hindsight 2020. Man, I thought I got out at a perfect spot, and it dumped right after I exited. I thought I was in the clear. and then it never broke the low. Oh, crap. There it goes. Yeah, it happens. It's the Nasdaq for you, I guess, just reinforcing its position as the vindicator. $8:30 news candle just doubled up. Yep. And so far we have the POC shift up to 13,882. Obviously that POC shift is on the open, but if there were sellers who were trying to get this to rotate back down, they just got dumpstered. So there's been no pullback, and we can see a lot of big pulses in volume down here that if it does pull back, they'll be utilizing to get out, which is perfect for the L1 continuation. If it keeps going higher, then we might have to wait for more like an L2 because that would put it more towards the volume. Sort of depends on what they do here. Gold is screaming to the upside. That swing we were talking about, what was that, yesterday at the end or whatever, worked out perfectly. Although it did mess with it a little bit. Rotten gold market. You can tell they really messed with a lot of people in the overnight. Not just Nasdaq, but everything. Seeing a little bit more of a pullback here. S&P breaking down back through volume 1975 and getting a dip back to the average cluster. This is the first time that it's pulling back to the average cluster after breaking above it. This is either a continuation spot where buyers are going to be looking to buy in and accumulate, looking for another leg up, or the point of interest that fails and we begin chopping into a range again. Because, I mean, really, this hasn't gone anywhere. Still waiting. The Nasdaq, jeez, oh Pete, we've got some huge candle gapping, although they're filling it in pretty quickly here on these on the last 2 minutes. Little dip back to the L1. We'll see if buyers want to maintain support off of the L1 and give us a proper entry, or if they're just going to V bottom out of there. They've been playing hardball lately. Okay, they're starting to dip back to the L1s. They're getting close. Again, demonstrating accumulation volume up here. So it's a little bit of a concern that buyers are going to have a harder time in this L1. I mean, what objectives could they be hunting for now? That's all we can really do is just project. Now that we're way up in the stratosphere again at all-time highs, there's not really much else to do as far as objectives go. So let's see here. Let me get this really, really close. What kind of objectives do we have going on? That one's not going to help anything. We've got, I mean, that one's so far away. Okay, well, I was hoping for some, like, candle gap objectives or something like that. Very interested to see how they respond to these all-time highs. The last time we had a break of the all-time highs, they ended up closing directly on top of it, attempting to reject it, then got above it with a good 3-day pulse or so. Same thing over here. They closed on top of it. Finally got above it. Got a good, looks like about a 5-day pulse to the upside with a little bit of sideways. Time before that was a straight up breakout. Attempted breakout, complete failure. So, man, the highs are really touchy. Which means that for the next week, we're probably going to be utilizing the previous all-time high level as a level of support or resistance. So let's make sure that we get the proper price. There we go, $8.93.25. And let's mark this in neon pink. Something so it's just blatantly obvious. Hey, you need to pay attention here. Magenta? No, come on, we can do better than that. Isn't there a pink? That's not as bright as I was hoping. Hot pink. There we go. Bam! That's the previous all-time highs right there. And I'm going to lock it so I don't accidentally delete it. Yes, I know. All right. $8.93.25. Now, you'll notice that happens below the bottom of the L1. We're seeing accumulation volume. There are things suggesting deeper pullbacks going on here, not to mention the undertow, which is now heavily confirmed. So we've got, there's a few concerns for an L1 pullback. I would rather see an L2. If we look at where that lines up, That is almost perfect. Directly on top of 5-minute volume, directly on the retest of the POC, right back in the L2 on previous structure at the... I mean, that's... you can't get better than that. If the buyers are looking for a spot, that's it. Right there. I can't see any other spot that they would really want. Plus, it would be a little slide through the all-time highs, which we've seen historically. It fits the bill. This might test our patience, though. Got more accumulation phasing going on at the highs. Volume still kind of proving that phasing is there. And the 1 hour second target's even better at the half deviation, 970. Yep. I mean, the thing is, though, if it starts getting to 13,970, what's going to stop it from going to 14, you know? I mean, on the Nasdaq, 30 points is like nothing. That's maybe 15 minutes. Doesn't take much. This thing is whipping all over the place. Nice initial rally up. I feel like an idiot for exiting where I did now, but hindsight being 2020, of course. At the time, it was a totally logical spot. Can't beat yourself up too much. What a monster of a run. Bulls could be looking for another continuation leg. They're still maintaining price action up here. The POC hasn't shifted. They don't really have any news or anything else to move the markets around. So the 15-minute longs now come and see the open and the RTH candle go, now what? Yeah, exactly. I mean, the 15-minute from the open at least hasn't done... It started off really good. Now it's just kind of pausing. This could just be an accumulation phase. I mean, you can see the volume here. It definitely supports another accumulation phase to try to go up. But right now, at least, we're seeing that from the short perspective. Until it starts building above this POC, at least. Then different story. And the buyers have a bit of trouble. They're trying to get above the high closes, though. 13,931.75. I just want that deeper pullback. Please. And break out above the highs. Here we go again. Still no pullback, really, outside of just continued L1s. Yep, 10 o'clock, 5 minutes. Still no pullback. Still waiting. That deeper L2 is going to be the one of interest. Double the 9 o'clock candle? It's possible. I mean, jeez. What a move. To be fair, I mean, they've needed a move. I would have preferred to see it pull back or you know, something like that instead of going straight up. This is concerning because now we have this move to the upside, which is, you know, that's great. Again, it's all-time highs, awesome, whatever. But these are huge candles. These are no joke type candles. These are either continuation type candles where we're just going to see this thing go meteoric all the way into space, or it's going to be a situation that it kind of fizzles out and dies because it's overextended itself and it's got to pull back a bit more. So far, bulls seem like they're in charge. Man, none of those look good, do they? Possible wedge on the top, I guess. A little bit of a false break. I swear I made this. Maybe I deleted it and did it again. There we go. J&J news affecting cruise and airlines. Time to buy more CCL. Yeah, no joke. Has it actually pulled back at all, though? Or is it just, like... I mean, anywhere near the areas that we were talking about it back when it was dipping, at least. It's been a while. Those are the types of stocks that I buy and forget I own. Oh, okay, well, I'll come back and I'll look at it a while from now. Nice. What was the other one? RCL. Royal Caribbean was the other one. I still think they have a huge long-term potential, but... $10 pops the market back up to the highs. CCL from 30 to 26. Oh, wow. I mean, that's fine. We were talking about it down in like the 14s, 15s, so it's... Huh. I mean, it's going to need to pull back eventually. Just looking at the daily chart, at least, it's pretty consolidated. That was a big, nasty bear bar on the top of CCL, though. No divergences, no undertows or anything like that, so I'm not too concerned about it. Value pullback, yep. BTFD. 14,400 is the target area for the Nasdaq based on inverse head and shoulders broken to the upside on the daily chart. Gotcha. 14,400. And I mean, again, that's into those 14Ks. All of the objectives or a lot of the upside targets are at like 13,970, 13,980, 965. You know, it's so close to that psychological number that you have a hard time believing that it won't just reach out and grab it, you know? And a lot of times when that happens, they will overshoot it. So seeing it go up to like 14.4 on a quick pulse, that would make sense. Especially with the candles that they're plotting on the hourly. Nice job, Steve. Great work. Can you say that all-time high buyers don't fear the pullback and they're optimistic in an economic sense? Yeah. I think that's fair to say. I think the assumption, if you're buying all-time highs, is that you're going to see one of those blow-off years where it hits the all-time highs and then just keeps going, right? Or at least initially for the big pulse. A lot of buyers will kind of wait for the all-time high to break and then look for the pullback, which we saw in all of those wicks and backs and forths and all of that. That's why I like that dip to 893 quarters still. But I think that would be a fair assessment. Yeah, they're very optimistic. Which, I mean, it keeps going back to highs, so, okay. I can't fault them. Can we get that deeper pullback? Man, this swing low down here in the 912s looks... I mean, I still want it to go down to like the 881s because that's the hot spot. But that little poke underneath that bottom looks nice. It's hard not to like that as a vindictive spot knowing the Nasdaq. There's a nice little VVP waiting there at 910. There's also a really nice quick one at 903. Divergence between the Dow and the Nasdaq. How much, though, does that really... I mean, in terms of the Dow and the Nasdaq, at least historically, like I said, I'm out of the loop when it comes to the Dow. How much of a correlation is there between the two? I haven't looked in ages. I mean, I obviously know the S&P and the Dow are like best buds, but the Dow and the Nasdaq, that one, I'm not so sure. I know the last time I looked at it, it was always back and forth. Sometimes it was really good, sometimes it was really bad. Not much lately? Gotcha. I mean, they usually play catch-up eventually. So I always feel like every time I start paying attention to the Dow is when it starts slowing down. So I'm always late to the party with it, so I just never pay attention to it. So far, not a whole lot going on, really. Things kind of quieted down. S&P's back above settlement. Really nice few bull bars to the upside. Very nice. Upside candle gap objectives at the moment, 26.50. So buyers still have a reason. 24.75, 23.75 on a 1-point pullback, but they couldn't even go one tick higher. What's to stop them from pulling back further down to 22? That makes more sense to me. So from the scalper's perspective, it's the assumption that buyers with this amount of continuation will be looking for at least enough to get a scalp out of it before seeing maybe potentially a little bit more down. And if it does go a little bit further, there will be enough buyers there to prop the market up regardless. So as long as it's staying above settlement and everything, well, maybe not necessarily settlement, the first 5-minute volume is more kind of the zone of interest. If it starts breaking through that and we start, plotting some nasty candles to the downside, then obviously it's not worth it, but... On the crypto side of things, I never know, is my data feed actually correct now? EOS over 7 now. Whoa. Whew, man, the gift that keeps on giving. Litecoin almost into 300s now. Ethereum continuing higher. Bitcoin popping. Bcash over 700 now. I'm kind of disappointed in Link, I gotta say. I would have thought Link would have gone by now. Seems like it's slacking a little bit. Maybe it was a little too overvalued. It might need a pullback. It's just concerning how we're not really getting any movement to the upside while everything else is rocket shipping. Could just mean that it's accumulation before a big pop. But honestly, if buyers are looking for a reason to get in, it would, nice little dip, swing low trap, something like that. A little flush back down to 30. It's not really following through. Same with Tezos. Lumens are all right. Uni had a gorgeous breakout and then just kind of fell apart. Yeah, I did see, and that would obviously, very obviously be the reason for the meteoric pump in Binance Coin. But it was the tokenization of stocks. The first stock that they were talking about was Tesla. I don't know if they're going to do it like one stock at a time like that, or if they're just going to implement the ones that everyone votes on. That'd be kind of cool, right? If you have Binance tokens, you can cast your vote. That would make sense, right? Utility tokens. Hey, more value. But stock utility tokens being able to trade with crypto as the backing and having, being able to fund a stock trading account with no PDT. Oh man, can you tell I'm excited? Oh, God, get this PDT garbage out of here. If it takes crypto to do it, then fine. Then we'll be able to have some fun. 1/100ths are basically CFDs backed on crypto. But the cool thing is Binance has them in, like, they actually have the shares. So it's not just like vaporware. So just like everything else, they have it backed up. So yeah, no wonder Binance went from 250 to 600-700s, or well, I don't know, how high did it go? 637. Mm-hmm. Any pullback? Something? Inside bear bar, but I mean, okay. Like, that doesn't prove anything to me. If they trigger above the highs, I didn't want to buy high anyway, so that doesn't bother me. If they pull back to 41.22, that would be a much more logical place for buyers to want to buy in a pullback for a scalp back up. Hey, how's it going? Crude oil, total fake out above the highs on the 15-minute. Giant wick. Let's get the rest of this volume in here so we can see what's going on. POC shift up to 13,930. We are now demonstrating full-blown accumulation volume. If we start showing that there's some problems, like, I don't know, an undertow, while the market's trying to go higher, that could cause some problems. That doesn't mean that the bull trend is done. What this tells us is to expect the next pullback to be deeper than you would normally expect it to be. So I'm not looking to be an L1 buyer anymore, right? We were doing that along the way. That obviously worked. Punch myself in the forehead for that one. Hashtag facepalm, I believe, is the appropriate one now. But if we can get an L2 pullback, that would be the next zone. And look how well it lines up with everything. It's just perfect. Especially that quick overnight dive, that adds so much bullishness to this move up. because it juked everyone out in the overnight session really early in the morning. People weren't necessarily in the office yet, not able to respond. It was an awkward time for people. So now they're kind of playing catch up the whole way higher, which means that the first decent pullback will be the big zone of interest. Is the S&P anything? Now, looking at the S&P on like a 15-minute basis, this is a little bit of a tough spot, right? I mean, we're breaking above settlement, but there is a metric ton of back and forth here. Now, that's, as a scalper, that's great because I'm more than likely going to get enough back and forth volatility to be able to get basically any scalp filled inside here. But I'm not necessarily expecting this to go screaming higher until we break the top. And it all depends on how they break the top, too. So we've got a little work to do yet. It's getting there. Volume still sticking around the 13,930s, but not a whole lot going on. Just sitting and waiting. There's only like 30 seconds or so left on the candle. Man, I was really hoping that we would get a dip underneath that 41.23 to get that pop back up on this candle. Not quite. 5 seconds left. Hit that like button, y'all. I like it. All right, I'm going to cancel the S&P. This is a little bit too sloppy, and if the sellers are going to take it now, we've had enough sideways action where they might be able to at least get back down to here. It doesn't make much sense being a buyer above that. So I'd rather kind of sit on the sidelines and sort of wait to see what it wants to do at the moment. Do you have any trades today? Yeah, I have that phenomenal L1 pullback on the Nasdaq, which is right here. Now, okay, let me bring this back. Okay, so we've got this in perspective. I was buying the dip and I was looking for profit taking back up into the highs. Right, huge volume spike, everything was staying. So that's where I was exiting. At the time, it was totally logical. All right, I gotta back myself up because I keep beating myself up inside my head here about this. It happens sometimes, but that was the one big runner to the upside. I was still trying to hold on to the longs from last night, or I'm sorry, from yesterday. But once they failed at the Euro session highs again, I jumped ship on the last one, and I was feeling great about it initially, and then it didn't break the lows, and then I realized I gave up. I gave up. That's how I gave up my entire position. So you'll notice my entry back to the long side was super, super delayed. I'm normally a little bit more aggressive than that. But I know because I missed out on holding onto this long from a psychological standpoint, I'm going to have a bit of FOMO, right? I think that's fair from a human element. So I have to hold on to my brakes a little bit, right? I've got to pump the brakes when I'm getting giddy or when I'm getting excited about things. I've got to say, wait a minute. I get it, but are you just buying it because it's FOMO, or is there an actual pattern here? And there were definitely a few trades that I kept myself out of early that, from a scalper's perspective, would have been all right, but from the swing, it would have just been chopped up. So from a psychological standpoint, coming into today, I'm already pumping the brakes a little bit just out of fear of FOMO. until I can feel things out a little bit, you know? Now, at this point, that's not a worry anymore, but when you're first coming into it, that definitely is. You bought the RTH Open, had the limit pending settlement just in case. Got out early. Yep. I mean, it happens. I'm not gonna be upset by that move. It's fantastic. Now I just want that deeper pullback. What's your favorite pattern, shape to trade or to look for on the Nasdaq? I mean, we know the Nasdaq, right? The Nasdaq is a very, very trendy market, but it is a vindictive, just maniacal, vicious, bloodthirsty SOB of a market. We know that, okay? It's not a, oh, maybe. No, we know this, okay? It's got a trail of blood behind it all the way. So because that is sort of the case for the Nasdaq, one of my favorite setups are traps, or areas that could be perceived as traps, especially in trending markets. And that's what I'm looking for right now, actually. But as an example, you've got this really strong breakaway market, tight pullbacks, L1, barely L2s, L1s, all the way up. Well, what are traders going to do who bought down here, right? Or bought this first pullback? They're going to lock out the risk. They don't want to give it back anymore. So their stop was down here maybe or somewhere. They move their stop up. Then they move their stop up. Then they move their stop up. One of my favorite things that you can count on in a good trend on the Nasdaq is that it will pull back and it will take out too aggressive of stops. A lot of times these stops are on non-confirmed swing highs. That's something we talk about in the academy, but just use your eyes, right? An obvious swing. I won't get into the technicals because that's all explained there. But as long as they're maintaining that area, a lot of people will put their stops under it. And that is a picture perfect place for the market to come back and go, bing, take them all out, and then go screaming back up again. That is my favorite right there. But there are a lot of prerequisites. It's got to be a strong trend. Check. Right? We've got that. Everything is pointing to the upside. What do we have? Obvious swings. Ding, 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 ding. Where are people going to have their stops? Right underneath that low. It's a little bit of a bummer because I would prefer the entry to be down here. This is lining up more like an L1 again. But this area, anywhere down here, that's where I'm interested. So if you were to give it a shape, I guess it would be like that. Like just the vindictive poke. Obviously, context is everything, but. Going on to 1030 around the corner. We are below that major swing low, and they're still diving. They might be able to get down to those 893s, 895s. Man, that's that hot spot. Let's see what this volume looks like on this move up, though. Oh, yeah. Accumulation City. Sheesh. So this is the dive underneath this low. Right? We've got that push underneath the bottom. Now I want to see, do the buyers respond here? Do we get short-term higher lows, higher highs? Do we get some congestion? Do we get some proof? We already knew to expect the deeper pullback. Check mark. We got the deeper pullback. I wanted to get back to an L2 at least. But we know how it goes if you're waiting for a pullback on the Nasdaq. You might just miss the boat. All right, we're starting to see a little micro double bottom forming here down in the 90150s. I want them to go lower, but oh man, I don't know if they will. It's getting late in the morning too. This is usually when I start hitting the exits anyway. S&P does end up finding support below the bull bar. Like 4 candles too late. Like, obviously things are slowing down a little bit here. Nasdaq volume pushing over 200,000 now on the day. Here we wait again. Do you buy bar 4 and the target for the S&P? I mean, it's a phenomenal bull rotation off the lows. And again, it's that pullback back to the average cluster after breaking above. So it's a very common move given all the traps that we've had down here in this just gnarly candle. There are going to be a lot of shorts who are looking for this to continue down. I can't say I blame them, but it failed. So a lot of those shorts obviously gave up here, but if they still maintained their short, they're trying to get out, and that's going to be the area that they're going to look to get out at break even, right around there. And well, it couldn't quite make it, and it rotated all the way back up again, so it's still going. Sellers could very easily be getting squeezed, and if they're buying bar 4, the likely objective, at least initially, I think is fair to go for a 2-to-1. Realistically, because you do have the 5-minute resistance, you've got the settlement, you've got a lot of stuff in the way that the market's going to have to push through. So I don't think going for like a scalp would make sense. I think it's much more feasible to go for more of like the swing perspective. And if that's the case, that would be more along the lines of a 2-to-1, which actually was the high of the day so far at 41.2575. Well, RTH, that is. To the tick. This is why you front run. Bulls are trying to get this to rotate back up. This is just this thing looks like a boot. About ready to give someone the hoofing. So again, I love the long. I love the pullback. I want it to go a little bit lower. It's too late in the day for me to be throwing any type of like major risk on the table or anything like that. So I need it to come to me. It's got to chase my entry. My entries are down here. It's not quite there yet. So let's go into training time. We got about 5 minutes until 10:30 anyway. There's not really a whole lot going on, and the markets are slowing down. I'm not really willing to sit around and watch paint dry. So get those questions in. We'll get those covered for you. Just need one more good push down to 93.25. S&P bull gap objectives are, well, I mean, they've kind of filled in already. Not much. It is a little bit narrower though now. The candle gap objectives for the S&P is narrowed into 41.26. You're in at 9 and 150. Nice. I mean, I don't blame you. I really don't. I have a really hard time blaming you. It's just for me, I know I'm going to have to do other things outside of the office today, and I'm just not going to have a chance to really babysit it too much. So I can't get myself in a position where I'm in for too long, you know? I can play stops, targets, and just let it go, but that's just not my approach, I guess, more than anything else. Is there any other way to spot a trap or what to look for? So when it comes to traps, I wish I wish I had a better answer for you. Traps are almost exclusively contextual. It's all based on the psychology of what's going on at the time. That's the only reason a trap happens, is really, really short-term stuff. You're not going to see a trap take place, I mean, generally speaking. You're not going to see a big, nasty trap set up the same way on a 500 tick chart as you would on a daily. The end result will be the same, but the response and how quickly they move and everything else is going to be much more based on psychology when you're looking at the faster time frames like the 500 tick. And keep in mind, when I'm talking about market psychology, I'm not talking about, like what's between your ears psychology. I'm talking about the assumption of what's between the market's ears, so to speak. So it comes down to a lot of trying to understand what it is that you believe the market is doing at the time. And then from there, kind of discerning what it's, how it's responding and is it doing what you expect it to do, etc. So in this case, what we have going on right now, to me, I would see this as, okay, I'm not surprised that buyers are coming in here. Like, oh, whoa, no, wow. It's not a shock, right? We've already talked about this. I'm expecting them to come in here. It sucks for me because I wanted it to be down here. But what I can use is I can use this information to my advantage. I know longs will have taken this. So if it does dive back down, I'm not expecting there to be any substance to that move down. I'm expecting that to be purely a trap for larger buyers who are trying to fill some bigger orders to accumulate into the move and push the market back up. So this immediately becomes a zone of interest for a trap point. Just based on the psychology as it is right this second. But again, that can change. In another couple of candles, the psychology could be totally different. Because remember, you have to look at it from both sides. Sellers had this first move down. They had a blow-away move, which is about 1.5 times. The obvious expectation on that is for leg A to equal leg C. That puts it where? Ding, 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 ding. Right? So I'm still very much happy to wait. I'm okay with that. And now that there's a potential trap that could take place there, makes it even better. But again, it all depends on how it wants to move. It might not happen. But at least I'm prepared if it does, That's what a lot of it really comes down to, is just kind of seeing and analyzing what you think is going to happen and then having an escape hatch for it. And then have another escape hatch in your escape hatch. That leads to another escape hatch, of course. I mean, got to make sure you're covered. So as far as traps go for me, the way that I like trading them, first off, is discerning where the location is of interest. And then once the market gets into that area, one of my favorite things for the market to do, once it's reached those trap zones. So let's say as an example, I want to see the shorts try to come in. And this is my zone where I'm expecting the market to find a reversal out of. So I want to see it do this, right? And the market's coming on down and it hits the zone. So this is ideally what I would like to see is obviously a V bottom, but this is not the perfect world. This is the real world here. So usually what you'll end up seeing is something like this, where it might bounce out of the zone. It might fiddle around with the zone a little while, might even poke outside of it. But generally what you'll end up seeing is higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. And eventually you'll see the POC shift. And once the POC shifts and price plots a strong bull bar, that's your entry. Now, it doesn't mean you can't get aggressive and just, hammer the buy button as soon as it gets into the trap zone, but understand you're early. And if you're early, sometimes those seats, when you're early to the party, they get expensive. It's actually exactly what we did on the first one this morning. This wasn't necessarily out of a trap zone, but the patterning was the same at least. It's the same concept, just different psychological backbone, I suppose. Now look what's happening. POC shifted at 13,930. What's the market stopping on right now? So I don't know if this is going to happen, but we can play the theory game, right? If it were to reject here and show some signs of bearishness, then realistically, it would make sense for the sellers to go where? Back to the inside swing low. So if I want to find a short in this area, I know that my objective versus my risk has to fit inside of that at the minimum. And then beyond that, we're looking for that big one. If that doesn't happen, then we've got a different game plan. It failed to show continuation below the volume. That means that it'll probably come back and act as support. And we'll see another leg up to all-time highs. And maybe that's the leg that gets it up to 14K. So a very important zone right now here at 930. Sorry, wording. 13,930 on the Nasdaq. Let me put it that way. Everyone in Chicago just got super confused. Or wait, is it 9:30 in Chicago now, or how does it daylight savings time? I don't know. All right, so now it's breaking above the volume, so sellers want to see it immediately respond back down underneath that volume node. And if they don't, if it pushes back down and holds support there, that's a huge problem for shorts. And we know that they're potentially shorts because they're demonstrating accumulation volume. By the way, side note, do you see what it did? Remember my favorite pattern? Cough, cough. It just didn't go. Just right there. Just missed it. Maybe it's not done yet. So looking at the short side, what would have been the mindset of a person wanting to go short around 10 or 10.16 on the highs? So realistically, the big objective is the fact that it's opening up at all-time highs going into the open. A lot of times when that happens, the market pulls back pretty heavily. At least initially, and then it V-bottoms at the open, and we all know how that operates. So the mentality of shorts building into the open is the assumption that we get kind of a reversion back to the mean, if you will, where the overnight session had ramped up so aggressively high that by the time we open up and it starts continuing back up again, shorts are thinking it's just too much. It's not sustainable. They'll sell above the highs, not too aggressive though. It's still around the open. Maybe sell a little bit more. And then really build in a position up at a zone of interest. I don't know why they chose 930, but that's what they chose. I don't know, but I know that's where all of their volume traded hands. So that's the level that I need to pay attention to. As far as the reasoning, I don't know. Throw a guess at me. Yours is as good as mine. But what I do know is that we've got accumulation volume and a very obvious note at 930. This could potentially spell disaster for longs if they can't hold it up here. Now, from my standpoint, if I were looking at it, when we have the Nasdaq that is pumping in the pre-market and we're opening up at all-time highs, etc., that would be the natural assumption, is that it would dip back. But a lot of traders will wait for that first high to get put in because we all know how the Nasdaq works. They get that crazy V-top or V-bottom. So they'll get that initial drive. Then after it pulls back, they'll start selling above that high. And that becomes the barrier, which it seems like is the case right now. So although we've got the POC at 930, wouldn't necessarily be a shock to see it poke its head up to the 40s. But if it starts breaking above that, then the shorts are really done for. Another break back to highs, and off we go. With technically an L1 continuation, as crappy as it is. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so that's going to do it for today. Overall, pretty good, I would say. I mean, a little bit frustrated in how things ended up in hindsight, but I think I played it as best I could given the information that I had at the time. I'm not going to fault myself too much, although I keep beating myself up about it. I think it's easy to do with this kind of move. But realistically, I think it was a pretty straightforward day. Nice continuation back to the upside. Yesterday was, in fact, what we expected it to be, a big dip day before rotation back up. We have the continuation back up today. A lot of buyers are taking profit, seeing some all-time high action, choppy. Usually it's going to close on top of the all-time highs, so don't be surprised to see it chop around this 893 quarter for the rest of the day, which is why I'm not really interested in doing anything else. But unless we can get a nice pullback, I guess. A settlement pullback, could you imagine, back down to 820? Buyers all over the place. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. As per the usual, if I miss any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll get those covered for you from there, jhb@ssftg.com. Otherwise, I hope you had a great day of trading. The tree trunk is in the truck bed. Anyway, enjoy before I go insane, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning, all right? Have a good one. We'll talk to y'all later. Thanks.